welcome back. This is the quarter video. I just recorded a full video and I realized I wasn't recording I wasn't recording my screen. So great. This is the second attempt. I hope it goes well. Um, Great quarter. We were at 21.68% ended. Really, this quarter I wanted to not have as much standard deviation, downside standard deviation I've had other quarters. So we've been outperforming these 4 quarters by every single one. And we've had positive alpha every single one. So it's quite impressive. First quarter was around 9%, slightly outperforming. Second quarter was 12.6%. Third quarter was 50%. And then the fourth quarter now has been 21.68, so around 22. So very good quarter. Um, in my opinion, this is probably our second best quarter because the last quarter was 50%, so it's kind of the best one. And then this one, I'd most likely say this one is better, um, because our alpha is higher. We do have a standard higher return, and there's not as much standard deviation or downward standard deviation as you can see. It's kind of been neutral. It was neutral for a bit. Getting some gains, and then it went higher. We had a good last 2 weeks, and then we got a lot of gains from there. But we were outperforming it multiple times this quarter, so really good. Okay, so Nasdaq was the best indice this quarter. In a bull market, and typically is. We were outperforming by a lot Nasdaq. We if you go back to the graph here, we were outperforming what I mean here in the beginning doesn't really count, but one, two, three, four, and then like five, and then so basically 5 points we were outperforming. When we were close, so that it's impressive, really good, and was I was able to uh, and when I was here when I was not outperforming, I was underperforming by quite a bit. Here, I was able to recover and then go all the way up. So great. Overall, it's at 8.4. We're at 21.7 basically, and we did pass the 60% mark for outperforming days. I think that's the highest it's been for Nasdaq for a quarter. I'm not too sure about that, but 50% is our goal. 60% is very good. Um, I mean, if we take off the outlier day, which was Wednesday, which was around 9%, we're talking about a 12% gain for us. So still 4% outperforming Nasdaq, 12.7. So still 4% bit almost. SPY would be even more. I think 6% outperforming without the day. With the day, it's still very high. But what I kind of mean is that without that one day, we'd still have a very good quarter. Um, Still, Nasdaq's been going up, everything's been going up, and we still were able to outperform. When it's been going down, we were able to outperform. So, what more can you ask for? SPY didn't do as well as Nasdaq. Still a great quarter though for SPY, 6.85, 63% almost. So that's the highest I've ever seen it for a quarter. That's for sure. 63, 62.8, 63. It's very good. Which also is kind of what I mean that we were outperforming 63% of days this quarter. That's very high. So even though kind of seen as neutral, we were still doing quite good. Over here, you got Dow. Dow's with the worst one this week. So Dow was 3.8%. Us 21.68. So there you go. And we did pass the 60% for all three. So that's one of never seen that before, but we did it. Actually, it might have been last quarter. I just don't remember because it's been a long time. But last quarter was not a normal quarter. Last quarter was very good, too good. So really, this quarter, kind of a more normal quarter, and we still hit the 60.5. We were less volatile, more alpha, and our beta was 0.5 this quarter, so that's still pretty good. Over here, comparison to all Nasdaq, SPY, Dow, typical. Our overall, so we are at 0.5%, which is daily percent gain is very good. After transaction cost too, so that's great. Our goal is 0.17, well past our goal. With our goal, we wouldn't be outperforming. We would be maybe close to outperforming. Wouldn't be such a good margin though, but still very good. Over here, 65% are profitable. So might not seem as much for green days, right? 65% of days are green. might not seem too high, but our days, our gains and losses for days are almost the same. So if you look at it like that, we do have a 15% edge on that, right? If you're 50-50 on your red and green, then I'd basically be neutral. With that 15% edge, we're already at 21.2. So, I mean, 22, my bad, 21.7. So it's still that 15% does a lot. Um, so being profitable 60%, this is in line with the overall results. I mean, 60 is the range, 60, 70. This is quite high, to be honest. We were at mostly 50, even 40% this quarter. The last week I did do a lot of trades. So, I mean, a lot, like one each day, really. So it did increase it, so that's good. But during more trades, I also did better on most of them. So this is what I mean. The gain losses are almost the same. The standard deviation is 2.4, which is kind of one thing I don't really like about this quarter. But the standard deviation also takes into account, when you go up, right? So if you're going up 10, 10, or if you're going up huge amounts, it's gonna go higher logically, right? Spies, the ratios are very good this quarter. Um, the standard deviation is 0.62. It has had a very good standard deviation and all that. It's typically around 1%. Um, overall here, this is actually, right now, don't pay attention to that, but over here, you can see this is 0.98. So, right, our difference is negative. So that's, one kind of part negative about this quarter. Our proportional gains and losses are not better than SPY, but it's still strong, right? 0.98 is quite strong. SPY just had also very good quarter. Typically, if you look at the charts for this quarter, it's not going to be anything out of the ordinary, but I mean, it's going to be something very high. It's going to be out of the ordinary. Our losses, if we want to have the same ratio, decrease it by 0.4 basically, or have our gains increase by 0.4. That's quite hard to do by not increasing your standard deviation. You kind of have to do that. So, just what it is. Our standard deviation is 3.18%. This should be the negative. If you go back, this should be negative 0.36. So, yeah. The mean transaction 0.86, so around the 1, which is typically one, in line with 1 to 1.5 is the normal range. So right now it's almost at 1. It's not that much. I mean, one buy or one sell, basically one buy a day or one sell a day. I mean, it's not anything out of the ordinary, but it is quite, active. It's not like a sit and wait type thing. It's quite controlled and active. Um, and this is mostly with the 40% hedge I have. I'm doing these trades. The day trade is quite low, which is good. You typically don't want it to be too high. That means, you're doing a lot of stuff. 0.2, that's basically one a week, so nothing out of the ordinary. So this chart hasn't really been shown until now, right? I can only show it until the end of the quarter. So what I've invested in. So here we have SPY was 60% of the portfolio throughout the whole quarter. All the quarters from now on until I change it, which I won't, and I'd have to let before the quarter starts, to let not everyone know. But from now on, it's going to be 60-40. So 60%. I mean, not from now on, from last quarter, it's going to be 60-40. So 60% is always going to be SPY. So there you have SPLG. Picked SPLG only because of the low share price, so I can actually buy more shares, because if I can't buy fractional shares with Schwab because they're dumb. So basically, I have to buy SPLG to actually get to that 60% number. Looking at our hedge, right, the 40%, there's kind of been a variety of stuff, but if you look at it, it's mostly been indices, right? You got TQQ, SMC is a super micro short. SOXO is an indice basically. It's a semiconductor indice. TNA is an IWM 3X. Then you have ASMG, ASML stocks, that specific stock. Let me move the camera to see the rest. Okay. SMCX, so that's a 2X super micro. SOXOS is also an indice. So we're looking at what, 46, you add 4, 50, 55.4 SOXO, right? Then you have 55, then you have like what, 61, 62 with TNA, and then you had 13. So around 74% have been from what I've invested in have been mostly trackers of an index of a collection of stocks. We've had SMCX, which did deliver good gains. SMC delivered good gains. Um, from the earnings report, right? Then you've had, which it was for the earnings report. I was already outperformed by quite a bit, so I was willing, and I also decreased the position by 50%, so it was only 20% of the portfolio. Um, so the idea with that was that, like, okay, if it didn't go my way, I'd still be outperforming, most likely, and I'd still have 2 days to do something, and then if it did go my way, then great. So it went my way, so that's where we got that 9% gain from. So really good. TNA was it was meh. I did have good gains, but then the problem was that those gains became neutral, and then I had to close it red to switch over to TQQ and Soxo. So whatever. What else? ASML was interesting. ASML was annoying. It was like 2 weeks, I think, holding or something like that, and it didn't really give me anything, so I had to close it for a bit redder, slightly red. And the stock eventually did crash for the earnings report. So I did sell before the earnings report. I didn't want to hold that company. It was annoying. Every time, I don't know why, but every time for like the pre-market, it always decreased a lot, and then it increased during the day, eventually being neutral or slightly green, and then the overall market would be overall good, like it'd be a lot higher than ASML. So it was quite annoying. So I went out of that. Um, what else? Success was good. I mean, it was gains came and they left. So in the end, it was like, later on the next slide, there's how many for each of the categories. How much did I get positive? So yeah, let's switch on to that. Over here, let me put the camera back. Actually, no, let's leave it here for now. So we have SPLG, only one trade, holding the whole quarter. That ended up positive. Great. Success was 50%, so meh. SMCX was also good, just on Friday, really that last day. In the end, it did give me more gains than losses, so that's great. But Friday was annoying. ASMG, as I said, I just closed that, held it for most of the time, only once really. Closed it TNA, bought it once, then closed it red, switched over to the other variations. So I switched it over to TQQL, I think I remember, or Soxo, one of those. Soxo, as you can see, there's no bar. That means that it was neutral on all the trades. I think there was only one trade and it was neutral. SMC, great, all positive. So, shorted quite some times. Ethereum, that was a very small intraday thing. It was just I was wanted to go short, and Ethereum seemed attractive, so I shorted it. In the end, I closed it neutral. It would have been a positive trade if I closed it later on in the day, but who cares really? Over here, you got TQQ, so TQQ, great. Had some good gains on that. Kind of bought at the low at the dip after the Friday crash from last week, so that was great. HIMS, this was last quarter was very good on HIMS. This quarter didn't seem as attractive. I mean, one day that stock fell like 20 something percent. So, that stock is very volatile, so I didn't really go into it this quarter. Um, I had too much. It's not really a great stock to go in at the moment, to be honest. I mean, it's been more volatile and has a lot of, different risks associated with it, and especially from the last earnings report. So, I haven't really gone into it. It's not as attractive as it was. So, I mean, that's how stocks work. Its price is quite high for what it is. But it was just a quick 1 day trade. So, it was last week, really only did it for 1 day. Got a good gain on it. So, it was fine. He just entered and left really quickly. I think it was like 5 minutes or something. No, probably like 10 minutes. Quick trade. Beta, zero 0.5 basically. I mean, zero 0.5 is, pretty good. We do have a high alpha, 0.18 on the next slide. So, considering our alpha is the higher, second best alpha, I think, in a quarter. Uh, what else? We were mostly at uncorrelated beta. We were at zero for most of the quarter, right? And then last week, right, with the earnings report and all that, it did increase to 0.5, which is still quite low. I mean, you're looking at 0.5, the correlation of SPY, so not in half the correlation of SPY is nothing out of the ordinary in a bull market. And our overall beta is actually like negative 1 point. It's around negative 1. So I want to have higher betas to try to get that overall beta to increase the uncorrelated amount. So interesting, yeah. Jensen Alpha 0.18, so very good quarter. Yeah, nothing there. Sharp from this quarter, so this is only the 2 months from this period. It's not annualized, so it's 1.34. SPY is around 0.88. So we are outperforming the Sharp from this quarter. Overall, if you annualize this quarter, we're looking at 3.24, which is very high. SPY right now is a 3.66, which is very high. Typical SPY Sharp is around 0.7. So, this quarter was very good. Last quarter, the whole tariff recovery thingy, so that was insane. But the overall Sharp for SPY since I started is not that high. All the volatility has affected its Sharp. The overall for us is a lot higher than what it is for SPY, which is, that's kind of the importance of holding. You don't want to be leaving in and out of quarters. So, from the inception video, you'll see that data. It's going to be the next video uploaded. But yeah, 3.66. Our Sortino is better annualized, so 6.34 is very high Sortino. It SPY's around 5, so we do have a better Sortino, which just means that we have less standard downside standard deviation. It doesn't take into account when you go up the standard deviation for Sortino, so our downside is less than it is for SPY. So in a way, the ratio is better, so we have a slightly higher Sortino, which is basically good. SPY is a bit lower. Positive alpha, you can't really ask for much more. Expectancy ratio is quite high. It's positive. That's what you want it to be. This is just how many trades are profitable times the average amount that you're profitable. And then here you have the overall portfolio return, 21.68. So very good quarter. There was one slide here that actually, I don't know why it's not here. It's in the inception video. It's the average hedge position. The average hedge position is around 1%. So that kind of just means that on our gains, right? We're earning around 1%. I'm pretty sure that's the number. If not, I'll put up a text saying it's not. But it's around 1%. I'm pretty sure. So, that's really good. Our goal is to be above 0.5% on that hedge number. So yeah, 21.68 after transaction costs. So great quarter. If you want to join, let me know. Email, LinkedIn, and literally anything. And yeah, so great quarter. Already been talking a lot. I'll do the inception video next. So go watch that after this. And yeah, thank you. Bye.